Have you ever felt that manipulation is a sin reserved only for villains? You've been convinced that influencing, persuading, and directing another's will is dirty, dangerous, almost a moral crime. But that's the first big lie. Manipulation isn't evil, it's survival. It's pure instinct disguised as courtesy. It's raw power, waiting to be used by whoever has the courage to look beyond the social mask. Today I'm going to reveal 6 manipulation tactics you can use without feeling guilty. Yes, you read that right. Without guilt, without remorse, because power is not the privilege of the wicked, but the refuge of the conscious. Imagine for a second the times you were manipulated without realizing it, in your family, at work, in relationships. Did you rebel? Or did you accept it, swallowing the discomfort in silence, thinking that's just the way life is? Today I propose a radical change. Stop being the prey, learn to be the strategist. Because manipulation, when done consciously and without harming, is an act of self-defense. It is reclaiming the control that others snatched from you with soft words and calculated gestures. But beware, I'm not looking for you to become a tyrant. The tactics you'll learn here aren't weapons to destroy, but tools to protect yourself, to influence with elegance, to balance the game in which you've always been a pawn. Because there is manipulation that liberates, that gives you back control of your story, that teaches you to lead without subduing, to convince without crushing. Do you dare to face your own desire for power? Or will you continue pretending that innocence is enough to survive in a world of wolves? Choose. Because in the end, there are only 2 types of people. Those who manipulate and those who will be manipulated. And you, which side do you want to be on? This is your first move. Pay attention. What you're about to learn won't just make you stronger. It'll make you impossible to control. First tactic, directed silence. Don't underestimate the power of remaining silent at the right moment. Awkward silence is disarming. It forces the other person to fill the void with their own insecurities. Don't speak to fill spaces. Watch, wait, let the other person rush and reveal more than they imagine. Silence, well used, is a silent command. It forces others to expose themselves, to justify themselves, to show you their true colors. You won't feel guilty because you haven't lied or actively manipulated them. You've simply withdrawn your presence and let the other person reveal themselves as they are. Second tactic, emotional mirroring. It subtly reflects the posture, words, or energy of the person in front of you. Human beings trust those who are similar to them. They relax, let their guard down, and feel they're on safe ground. When someone feels understood, they accept your influence without noticing the invasion. Mirroring isn't falsehood, it's social intelligence. Copying small gestures, tones of voice, or phrases so the other person feels you're on the same wavelength. In this way, you open the door to persuasion without force or guilt. Third tactic, calculated vulnerability. Nothing inspires trust more than a fragment of chosen weakness. Sharing a small insecurity or mistake of your own, at the right moment, disarms others' defenses and generates empathy. But be careful, it's not about confessing everything but rather choosing what to reveal. Well-measured vulnerability is a master key. The other person lowers their guard, feels they can trust, and, in that instant, accepts your influence almost without realizing it. You don't manipulate to destroy. You manipulate to connect and open spaces for dialogue where before there were only walls. Fourth tactic, the destabilizing question. Instead of attacking or confronting directly, ask a question that shakes the other person's certainty. Are you sure that's the only option? Or, what if we look at it from another angle? Well-chosen questions plant the seed of doubt, break mental rigidity, and pave the way for your ideas. You don't impose, you sow. You let the other person explore new possibilities for themselves, but you set the direction. There's no shame in showing alternative paths to someone locked into their own narrow vision. Fifth tactic, the subtle redefinition. When someone defines themselves with a negative label, I'm bad at this, I always fail, don't contradict them head-on. Take their statement, gently modify it, and return it with a positive perspective. Maybe you're still learning, we all have room for improvement. This way you reframe the other person's identity without confrontation, and you plant the seed of a more powerful self-image in their mind, one that, oddly enough, they owe to you. Manipulation here is about gifting a new narrative, not stealing power from anyone. Sixth tactic, public engagement. Invite the other person to commit out loud to an idea or action. Is it okay if we do it this way? When people express something publicly, they feel the need to be consistent with their words. This isn't pressure, it's basic psychology. Internal consistency is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. Using this principle to guide actions isn't destructive manipulation, but strategic leadership. These are the 6 initial tactics. They don't require lying, forcing, or destruction. They are tools of conscious influence which you can use with the certainty that manipulation isn't always a dark act. It can be the light you need to regain control of your life and your relationships. Do you realize what happens when you apply these tactics? The environment begins to respond differently. You are no longer the passive figure waiting to be accepted, but the silent center that moves the pieces on the board without arousing suspicion. Guided silence, for example, transforms discomfort into a tool of revelation. People eager to fill the void expose their true intentions and weaknesses. You haven't manipulated to hurt, but to clearly see who's in front of you and regain your strategic advantage. Emotional swaying doesn't just open doors, it tears down invisible walls. You feel mistrust dissolve. The other person begins to mirror your own body language, your emotions, your rhythm. At that moment, influence ceases to be an abstract dream and becomes a tangible, almost physical phenomenon. There's no guilt because what you're doing is synchronizing to facilitate dialogue, not to bend wills. Calculated vulnerability, far from being a mask, is an act of strategic humanity. When you dare to show a crack, even a small and controlled one, the other person lowers their guard. They perceive you as an equal, not a threat. And in that space of trust, you can guide the conversation where you want. You've traded the weapon of manipulation for the bridge of connection. Here, manipulation is not an act of domination but of openness. The unsettling question is an invitation to thought, not a trap. Planting a well-formulated doubt can open worlds in another's closed mind. Observe how a single question can shatter years of certainty, and how the path to a new perspective begins with your intervention. You have manipulated, yes, but not to impose, but to expand the horizon of possibilities. Subtly redefining another's narrative is, in essence, sowing seeds of transformation. When you take a negative self-definition and gently reframe it, you don't steal power, you give it back. You help the other person rewrite their own internal script, and in that process, you become a reference, an invisible architect of a new identity. Ultimately, public engagement doesn't force, but rather activates one of the deepest laws of human psychology: consistency. When you get someone to say out loud what they'll do, you transform intention into reality. You haven't threatened, you haven't manipulated with obscurity, you've simply intelligently guided the natural flow of decisions. These 6 tactics not only increase your influence, they teach you that manipulation isn't a sin or a betrayal, if you do it with awareness and responsibility. True power isn't about destroying, but about creating spaces where your voice will have real weight. Ready to stop living on the margins and start guiding your own destiny? At this point, you have something in your hands that previously seemed unspeakable. The ability to influence without corrupting, to manipulate without guilt, to build power without disguising it with false humility. But here begins the real test. Will you be able to sustain this new language when the world demands the weak and complacent version of yourself? Because guilt, that programmed voice that whispers in your ear that influencing is sin, will try to drag you back to the sidelines. However, you now know that manipulation is not poison but a tool. It is not betrayal but defense. What matters is the intention and awareness with which you choose each tactic. Remember, guided silence is not punishment, but a space for the truth to emerge. Emotional scattering is not falsehood, but strategic empathy. Calculated vulnerability is not weakness, but intentional connection. The destabilizing question is not an attack, but an opening of possibilities. Subtle redefinition is not dark manipulation, but the seeding of new narratives. And public engagement is not pressure, but a catalyst for action and coherence. Each tactic is an invitation to stop living on autopilot, to abandon the role of victim and assume that of architect of your destiny. It's not about dominating others out of pure ego, but about protecting yourself, influencing where you were previously ignored, regaining control where you only found resignation. These tools are not meant to destroy, but to build a place for yourself where your voice carries weight, your ideas guide, and your presence doesn't fade with the wind. Now choose. Will you hide your power again for fear of being judged? Or will you dare to use these tactics, not to manipulate for the sake of manipulation, but to never be manipulated again? The world will keep turning. Wolves, lambs, silent witnesses. The difference lies in whether you decide to inhabit the shadows of the margins or, with strategy and awareness, illuminate the center of your own story. Lift your gaze. Dare to practice, to fail, to refine your art of conscious manipulation. Because those who master these tactics live in the center of the board. They guide, inspire, set the pace. The rest simply observe and survive on the sidelines. And you, which side do you decide to live on from today on? Make the choice. True power begins the exact moment you stop asking for permission and start writing your own script. Silence. The world awaits your next move. Are you ready to stop living on the sidelines and start guiding your own destiny?